USCHO.com.
Welcome to USCHO Edge for Friday, December 8th, 2023. I'm Ed Trefzger along with Jim Connelly and Dan Rubin. And guys, we're going to stay to the West because for some reason, Jim, DraftKings didn't put up any hockey game odds in Division I college hockey for anything in the East this week.
I was a little bit surprised by that. I don't know if they're getting killed in the East or maybe their Eastern guy took a vacation. Who knows? But yeah, all six of the games that were actually placed on the site were either Big Ten or NCHC games. This is a week out East where there's not a lot of league play. I get that. So maybe that is what they their AI bots that are setting lines. I assume this is still a lot of bot set lines at this point. They don't like the non-league games. There's a lot. There would be some pretty, complex odds to look at when you look at some Hockey East and Atlantic Hockey East ECAC matchups. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised that it's all West. But let's go. Let's dig into the West. Let's head west, young man.
All right, Horace Greeley, I will do that. Minnesota and Ohio State is our first game to look at. Minnesota is minus 220, Ohio State plus 170, and the over-under on this one is 6.
I mean, I really like the Gophers here. I like the over 2. I think this will be like a 5-2 Minnesota type game, maybe even higher. And if Ohio State pops a couple of extra goals, maybe a 6-4 game, that really hammers the over. I don't see this being a defensive struggle. So I there's no way I can go against the Gophers here. They haven't been consistent this year, but Ohio State has been probably the least consistent team in the Big Ten to this point. The only reason that the odds are not more in favor of Minnesota, I mean, I think I would have set this at probably like a 320. They have it at 220, but it's a road thing. They're on the road, so plus 170 for Ohio State. Couldn't touch that one. No way. I like Minnesota here.
No, and as much as I will sit back and pull now's the time to bet the road, the home dog. I wouldn't do it here. It's not something that, I mean, if you're looking for a value type, there's not a whole lot of value, I think, in betting Ohio State as the home dog anyway. Largely because if you look at the way that they've played over the course of the whole season, they haven't stopped teams from scoring. They just haven't. And Minnesota's a team that scores. So it's one of those. Hey, you want to throw a dart and just pick a game that you just want to pick the team that has a plus sign next to it. I think that maybe is some value to say that. In which case, somebody who won my March Madness pool a couple of years ago would like to have a conversation, because that same person, not naming names, that lives in my house, won by picking places that she'd visited. So that's kind of the same idea. Yeah, my wife won a March Madness pool based on where she'd visited in places that she liked, and I spent hours teaming over the bracket and I finished second up from the bottom. So that's why you pick Ohio State with a plus sign. That's the only thing I got for you. Ohio State, just for a number, if we're looking at the over-under, this is where I find some intrigue. Ohio State in the over, or the over-under in this game, taking the over, sounds like a good idea, because Ohio State has not allowed less than 3 goals at all this year, with the exception being the Lindenwood games, which you kind of throw out because Lindenwood, being an independent, I know they play some teams hard, but they're not on the same par, I think, with the Minnesota. And a couple games in there where they didn't win, which were the Michigan, they won the game in a shootout, so it's technically a tie, and the Omaha 2-2 game. So the rest of these games have been 3 goals allowed. They've won games where they've allowed 3 goals, like going back to the first game of the year against Mercyhurst, but 6-0, 6-4, 4-1, 3-0, 6-3 winners, 4-3 winners. Because they're so apt to give up 3 goals, I think the over becomes a fortuitous bet here. Like you said, a 5-2 type game.
And, Minnesota too, they're averaging close to 3.5 goals a game. So I put them at a 4 in this game, minimally. 4-3. That would be the worst case scenario for a better. If you're taking the over here, I like the over. But I see this as like a 5-3, 6-4, maybe 5-2 worst case scenario type game. It should be Minnesota's game, but listen, neither one of these teams has played consistent throughout the year. So definitely bet this one cautiously.
Yeah. One last number to throw in there too is the fact that Minnesota is 25% in the power play, is one of the best in the country, and Ohio State 78% on the kill, also not is down at 49th. So again, these are numbers that are heavily skewing towards analyses that says bet Minnesota here if you're going to bet it.
Denver is at Western Michigan. We know about Denver being the leading scoring team in the country. If you'd bet the over last Friday, you would have won, even though Denver lost 7-5 to North Dakota. You would have lost if we had talked about Saturday, a 3-2 overtime win for Denver. Western Michigan had a tough few games in league, but has won 4 straight. It's plus 120 at home for Western Michigan, minus 150 for Denver on the road, and the over-under on this one is a 7.
Well, the over-under is appropriate. Denver at this point, they're averaging, let's pull this up, 5.31 goals a game. Western, 3.71 goals a game. I'm not going to put defense in here because why confuse things? Come on. That game's going over. These are 2 of the top 10 offenses in the country. I give Denver, no doubt, some home ice cred. I'm sorry. I give Western some home ice cred, but I still like Denver here. They're just scoring at reckless abandon. I hate their defense right now. I wish they would play better defense. I wish they would get better goaltending. I think David Carl is a fantastic coach, but man, they've got to find a way to keep some pucks out. You can only rely on high-powered offenses. We go back to 2015 and Jack Eichel and the Boston University team that got all the way right there to a national title game and then lost a 4-3 decision. It happens. Like you have to be prepared to play some defense at some point. And I think that maybe this is where Denver starts to turn it. You're playing a Western team that can score goals, almost 4 goals a game. But you've got to find a way to show that defense is there. I see this being a 6-4, a 7-5, an 8-5, an 8-6 game. I just think, hey, listen, if you're going to be at in the stands, enjoy it. What a game you're going to see. You're going to see a lot of up and down. But I like Denver in the over here.
I'm going to disagree. And I'm going to disagree on the basis that, like you said, Denver has had trouble keeping the puck out of the net. I think their goals for that 5.26 goals per game in what Western brings to the table with 3-something, like you said, 3.67. Both are top 10 offenses. The computers, even the odds makers, everyone that wants to look at the West and say the over-unders at 7, I think it's a good bet to bet over. I absolutely do until they start hitting under more consistently. It's one of those, I'll take the over just to keep taking the over. But I do think if this is going to be a game that you want to lean towards Western Michigan for the reasons you just said, at home in Michigan, with a defense that's averaging 1.84 goals per game against a team that's had trouble stopping teams from scoring as of late, that to me leans into the Western deserves some great value as a home underdog. And for that, I'm looking at the home dog pick and saying, unlike what I just said with Ohio State, I'm saying with Western, I like them. I like the bet. I think that's a good bet. It's probably not as good a bet as I feel it is, but it's a good bet to look at Western as a home underdog and say, if someone's going to do it this week, feels weird because Denver could easily be the number 1 team in the country, but it feels weird, but it feels right to say, I kind of like Western as the home dog with the under. Now, if this is going over, I absolutely think Denver's winning it. But if this is staying under 7, which is a weird concept as well to say, what do you mean we're going to hit under 7? What do you mean these two teams could score 8-9 goals combined? But if this is going to be a 3-1 game, a 3-2 game, even a 4-2 game, I'm thinking Western's going to win this 4-2 with an empty netter.
Yeah, like, I guess there's a little bit of a confusion for me when I look at Western. You know, you start the year 4-0-1, then you lose 3 straight to Omaha and 2 to St. Cloud. And in those games, you only score 4 goals in 3 games. Then you explode and your offense starts pumping. And maybe not against CC, 7 goals in 2 games, but then, 9 goals against St. Lawrence, 8 goals against Lindenwood. Maybe right now, I'm just a little confused at what Western is. And I think this is the best test of the year. They failed the test against St. Cloud. So now you're going to face probably the best team you've faced all year. Where are you going to go? And this is the end of it. Like, you got to leave it all on the ice. This is the last game for both of, at least for Western before the break. Where are you going to go? How much can you put out there? And will offense be the key? Now I'm almost wanting to say hold off on the over-under bet, but I still do like the Denver bet. There's no doubt. I like Denver here. There's something I just don't like about Western. Something kind of feels funky, but I can't tell. It's one of those things that's very difficult to see when you really look at it right now. I just don't know that the test has been there yet for Western, whereas I think Denver has been tested a ton, and they've passed a number of them. They beat Boston College on the road. They've won games, against Arizona State on the road. I know that they split that series, but that was a crazy series. They took care of Yale. They had a great series last weekend with North Dakota at home. So I just don't know where I want to go with either of these two teams. But I think when I look at Western, I think this is their test. They need one.
It's a good point. The good point is it comes in with how much you believe in the numbers on Western, and the point that you're making that I'm now interpreting to and kind of building off of is Western's numbers a product of the fact that they've played inferior teams, and the numbers regress to the mean when they've played superior teams in some cases.
But yeah,
not all, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're giving up 3 goals over 4 games to St. Lawrence and Lindenwood, and right now those are 2 teams that, if you're a team that's 12th in the pairwise and an NCHC team competing for a national tournament spot, in that next tier under North Dakota and Denver, if you're in that like next tier of those teams from the NCHC, then yes, those are teams that you're gonna blow up on the spot. But then there's that tier that's above you, the St. Clouds, the North Dakotas, the Denvers, that you have to try to jump into. And we'll find out this weekend if those wins get them up to that tier or if the divide still exists. Because when you look at the results, the numbers for Denver are against teams, like you said, Jimmy, that are superior to the teams that Western has played, that has produced maybe some phenomenal numbers in there.
Well, we've got another couple of Big Ten games plus an NCHC game to look at when USCHO Edge continues. Welcome back to USCHO Edge. Let's take a look at another game in the Big Ten, and that is Notre Dame at Michigan State. I'm a little surprised that Notre Dame is this close, but I guess a good weekend last weekend over Michigan helps. It's minus 160 for Michigan State at home at Munn. Notre Dame a plus 124. The over-under on this one is 5.5.
Well, I mean, is this now the question of which Notre Dame team shows up? Is it the one that gets smoked by Boston College at home, or is it the one that plays Michigan tough? I don't know sometimes. Congratulations to Jeff Jackson on getting win number 400 last weekend. That's a great milestone, but I'm just confused by what Notre Dame is every weekend. It makes this game a lot harder to handicap, a lot harder to bet. I mean, I would look at this naked eye and say, oh my gosh, you can get Michigan State at home minus 160 against Notre Dame. But I feel like the odds makers have a good feel about this Notre Dame team. Up and down, wishy-washy, don't know what team is going to be there every night. And I think that's why it's very difficult to handicap, because Could they pull out a win or two on the road? Absolutely. They have the talent. They have the class. They're going to play what I think Michigan State might be the best team in the Big Ten right now. What does Notre Dame do against them? I would expect them to probably get swept, but this is a really hard one to handicap.
What is impressive to me about the Big Ten is how teams that we look at and aren't sure how to handicap are within a stone's throw of first. And to me, that's not necessarily a sign of a league's weakness or even of a league's parity. I think the Big Ten's a phenomenal league when you look at it top to bottom. Even Ohio State having a tough start to the year with no wins in Big Ten play, I think they're better overall as a program than an 07-1 with a shootout win would imply for 2 points in the league. I look at the Big Ten and I see a team like Notre Dame and I see them 4 points back of Michigan State. And I look at the overall records and I think to myself, is Michigan State the best team in the Big Ten, like you said, right now? And is the gap between Michigan State playing the best in the Big Ten and the rest of the Big Ten that far apart? And to me, the answer is no, because Notre Dame is capable of playing a certain way, because Wisconsin is capable of playing a certain way, because Minnesota can play a certain way, because Michigan should be playing a certain way. And well, they're not. And that we could do a full podcast about Michigan's drop in where I've put them in the polls and all that stuff. But that's part of the reason why in handicapping a game, I don't feel confident in betting value on Michigan State or Notre Dame because of that. And I'm kind of taking this one a little bit slower because I want to make sure I say it the right way, which is that I think Notre Dame can beat anybody in the country.
I agree.
I also think Notre Dame can lose to anybody in the country.
I agree.
And I will not bet Notre Dame, knowing that Notre Dame is going into a game with that exact reputation. And here's the thing, that game is not going to be close one way or the other. They're going to go out and they could conceivably slaughter Michigan State on Friday or Saturday at Munn. And then they could very easily go out and lose 6-1.
Yeah, I don't see the slaughter from Notre Dame. They win a game, they win it 2-1, 3-1, 3-2, 2-0, something like that. That's Jeff Jackson. They love to play from ahead. They don't like to chase games. They don't do well when they chase games. So if they can score first, who knows? But that's way too much of a who knows for me. Even the over/under of 5.5.
Hate it.
To me, no, don't like it. Like that should seem like, oh, slam the over. No, I don't like it because do you know how many 2-1, 3-2 games that could be played in this? And that is what Jeff Jackson and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish are probably really gearing toward, is playing a low scoring game. If it becomes a 5-2 game, guess who's winning? It's Michigan State. It's not Notre Dame. I don't see Notre Dame winning a 6-1 game like you just kind of hinted that they could. No, Michigan State, no problem. That could happen. This has stay away written all over it on every aspect of the betting lines.
The one thing to throw in there before we move on is that Notre Dame beat Michigan 6-1, yes, but Notre Dame beat Ohio State 4-1. Notre Dame beat Minnesota 4-2. Notre Dame beat Mercyhurst 5-0. Notre Dame beat BU 4-1. They also lost to BU 8-2. They also went to overtime with Mercyhurst in a 7-goal game 4-3, and they lost to Michigan and they lost to Minnesota 4-1. All of those games were right around the 5.5 over/under in some capacity, with the exception being the loss to BU, which was 8-2. So if you're looking, stay away. This is not a good bet. Unless you just really want to bet on Notre Dame, in which case you're a Notre Dame game, in which case you're probably a Notre Dame fan. I mean, in which case, have at it. Go for it. I'm not going to tell you what to do with your pizza money.
Well, that really cleared everything up, didn't it?
Of course it did.
They've got to be the most unpredictable team in college hockey.
Oh, easily.
Yeah, easily.
Well, let's look at our other one. Let's stay in the Big Ten before we go back to the NCHC, and that's Penn State and Wisconsin. Well, Penn State's not stopping many goals, but they sure score a lot. Plus 150 for Penn State and minus 195 for Wisconsin. Over-under is 6.
I don't really want to talk about the money line here as much as I do the over-under. I like the over here. I feel like this one will get to 7, will get to 8. I see a 5-3 type of game, and a 6-2 game wouldn't surprise me. Which team is on the best of that? It's probably Wisconsin. There's no doubt about that. They're at home. They're playing still good hockey. I just don't like minus 190. It's too high of a price. And I said that right? Minus 195. Yeah. Sorry. My eyes.
Which is even worse.
My old eyes are getting older, and yeah, it's totally worse. Like, I mean, $5 doesn't feel like much, but no way. I'm not touching that line because there's no value. I do like the over here though. 6. You're gonna push a lot of the time. That's good. Don't put it in parlays. Get your money back if you have to, but you're gonna hit the over a lot. I don't see the under popping a ton here. So yeah, I don't mind 6 here.
If I'm going to bet a team and I'm going to take the money line because I'm on the riverboat, I'm going to take Penn State. I hate the odds for Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin's going to win, but I don't like Wisconsin's odds. So that's one of those emotional hedge bets where you take Penn State if you're going to hedge it. But I still don't love it, and And if I don't love it, I'm not taking it. Who am I kidding? I'm not taking anything. But the over under, I like this to maybe tease, or I don't know if tickle the under is a good way to put it. Sounds a lot worse when I say it that way, but I don't mind it staying under a little bit and then maybe getting closer to the over towards the end of the game. I don't think this is going to hammer the over. I think this is a well-placed over under. I really think this is a well-placed over under. But I do think this is probably going to make you nervous if you bet the over until it is about halfway through the third period, and then it'll come home and you'll take the over.
Yeah, I don't disagree there. I don't see the value even at 150 for Penn State. You're not throwing a few bucks on this. Like, this is one where you have to bet it heavy to make something. There's no value there for me. I see the over under, the over bet here. Cashing, let's say it cashes 60% of the time, it loses 30% of the time, and it goes neutral, and you get your money back 10% of the time. That's still 70% return on investment. 10% you don't love the return, but at least you get your money back. I like those types of bets.
Let me throw one in here. Goaltending. Colin McClellan has been outstanding with Mike Hastings' new system. Meanwhile, Penn State's combined goaltending is an .877 save percentage.
It's where I say the goals are coming from. And Penn State scores. So I get it that Wisconsin doesn't give up a lot. That's fantastic. They'll probably give up a lot to this team, but I think they'll score a lot of goals. I see this feels at least on night one, and I think that's what we always get to talk about Friday. We don't do a Saturday morning podcast to publish this and let people think about what's happening on Saturday night. But on Friday night, at least, I see this being a potential 7-3 game, 6-5, 6-4, like high scoring game, because I think you've gotten into the Penn State wants to get out there. They just want to start scoring. Their goaltending is not that great. They haven't stopped a ton of pucks. They'll give up some goals to a good Wisconsin offense. I see this being a high-scoring game.
Maybe we should start on the Saturdays then. Get up and start recording these at 6 a.m. Let's see how crazy Ed goes producing these. He'll be on the road with RIT. We'll be calling him at 6:15 in the morning going, hey, we got to do the podcast for the Saturday games.
Let's find some lines. What's Saturday morning?
If I'm up at 6 a.m., I'm just picturing this conversation with my wife. She goes, what are you doing awake at this hour? I'm looking at gambling lines.
And if you did that to me this weekend, I'd be very unhappy because I've got a 1:00 game on Saturday for crying out loud. So I'd be doing the podcast while eating some kind of moist and runny and small granulated scrambled eggs from the buffet and whatever hotel we're staying in.
Hotel buffets.
I don't even know what hotel we're staying in. I'm glad I'm not the one driving. Last one on our list is Colorado College at North Dakota. Now, these odds are pretty wide, and I guess they're not surprising. Colorado College is plus 300. North Dakota is minus 425. The over-under on this one is 5.5.
Oh, this one is one that confuses me a little bit. And not in a bad way. It just, I'm conflicted here because this is the one that I would throw my money on the dog. I get it. Colorado College is on the road. I get it. Colorado College is not seen as a competitor to North Dakota, but plus 300? Come on. When are you going to get a decent, and this is a good hockey team. Don't forget, Chris Mayott's teams have been competitive in most games this season. So when are you going to get a team that you can bet plus 300 in college hockey and have a better than average chance of winning? I get it. It's a tough environment to win. You know, Grand Forks, the great crowd there. Engelstad, they bang it out. It's hard to win on the road. They don't lose a lot of games at home. But man, I love those odds. That's all I can think about here is I can't touch North Dakota. You know, come on. What is it? Plus 425 or minus 425? Not touching that, but plus 300 for a better than good Colorado College team. I love that bet. I just love it. If I had to make one bet this weekend, and I'm not saying it's a winner, so this is not my like lock of the week. This is not my best bet. But if I had to make one bet that I would enjoy making and watching it play out, come on, CC, why not?
Do we know when the last time CC actually beat North Dakota was, though? This is my whole thing.
Just trying to look that up.
It has not happened for a while. I'm pretty sure it's been pre-COVID. I'm pretty sure it was pre-COVID.
I would bet on that. Let's see. We do have history on the CC site, so let's go to history.
March 2019
was March 1st, 2019, a 3-1 win at home. The last time they beat them in Grand Forks was February of 2018, a 4-2 win for CC. So not that long ago, but those absolutely matter nothing when you look at the current. Now, you look at the numbers of this, and I want to go to the over-under on this one because that's kind of critical. It is 5.5. Let's go through the last. I'm going to go through 10 games. Ties 0-0. 2-1 win for North Dakota. 2-1 win for North Dakota. 2-1 win for North Dakota. 4-0 win for North Dakota. 3-2 win for North Dakota. 4-1 win for North Dakota. A 5-2 win for North Dakota. A 5-0 win for North Dakota. And a 4-1 win for North Dakota. How many of those went under? 9 out of 10 went under 5.5 goals when these teams have played in the last 10 outings. I don't want to say that you have to bet the under here, but just Jesus, don't take the over.
I'm thinking of one of my friends.
They've gone over once. I mean, once. Yeah, now I'll even go further back and go back another 10 games, and only 2 of those 10 games went over 5. There was one of which was a blowout. An 8-1 win in 2020 and a 4-3 overtime win in January of 2019. And there was a 5-1 win for North Dakota back in 2018. I mean, these teams do not play massively high scoring games. I know that North Dakota is a bit different than the last 2 years, but we just gave you a 6-year sample size, and these teams do not play high scoring games.
And they're both getting great goaltending.
I was going to say there is a key in this also, which is the goaltending, which and I was just going to say, like, one of my friends would always say, like, oh, so you're going to root against fun. You're going to root against goals. Because when he says basketball, less points is less fun. Root for fun. And I'm sitting here saying, yeah, these teams aren't going over. They never go over. And you can't set a line really in college hockey lower than five. Like if you set the line at 5.5
is the lowest.
5.5 is the lowest you're going to get.
This is not Army. This is not Army Navy football at 27.5. You know,
right? This is not a sport that they're going to look at. You know, and I don't even think in the NHL you get lines that are really lower than. I think now the lines are ballooning up now. So you're not going to get a 5.5. That is the lowest it can go, and it's still not low enough for my liking. I will say I love Colorado College's odds. I'm just going to agree with you there, kind of to take a step back, which is the plus 300 on a team that I like tells me that coming off an emotional weekend too for North Dakota. Like there's always in the regular season that letdown. If this were a postseason, if this were getting ready for the playoffs or anything like that, last 3 weeks of the season, I would easily say North Dakota was probably going to win this and don't take the odds at all. But also the number one team in the country when they get hot. This goes back to something I said. I think it was last week with the ebbs and flows. Is North Dakota is currently flowing, but that's going to crest and come back down at some point, and then they're going to have to hit the gas pedal again. I given the odds, I'm with you. I think Colorado College is it's plus 300 is never a good bet when you're looking at the odds because the team is, but if you're going to look, and I say that meaning like if you look at the odds, someone say, yeah, I bet a team plus 300. All right, you're crazy. But at the same time, I don't think it's that crazy this time around. I mean, I like it.
College basketball, you have some plus 500s that have hit, plus 750s that have hit this year. I know it's a broader sport. There's tons more teams that play, but these things happen I think in hockey, those little bounces that you talk about all the time, or you get a team that just doesn't get up for an opponent. Like that happens all the time. I feel like college hockey is a great place for underdogs.
Mm-hmm.
I would not hammer favorites in college hockey to save my soul. I would always be looking for underdogs. And I think in, most of the columns I've written, even if I'm picking a favorite, it's usually because it's like minus 140, minus 150, not minus 425.
I legitimately do think about last winter when we talk about a plus 300 back, and this is in the NBA. Bear in mind, this is in the NBA where the favorites usually are favored for a reason, and there's a ton of handicappers and things work in that. I remember hearing a story about a four-way parlay, and which four-leg parlay, the first three were kind of light favorites. In the fourth leg was the San Antonio Spurs, who were like plus 3 something. And a $20 bet turned into a $700 win because the Spurs were playing a Milwaukee team that was giving the wrong players the night off, that was coming off of it was like the second game in 4 days, and they were coming off of a really emotional game against like Houston or Dallas. I can't remember. It might have been Dallas. And so they were doing the Texas Triangle, and they come into San Antonio and they're playing a team that's not very good, but still has talent to be had. And San Antonio goes out and wins. And as the story goes, the $20 bet turns into a $700 win because of that. So if you're looking at a team with that whole kind of scenario, substitute North Dakota into this conversation. North Dakota, very good team. I don't know if they're going to be, quote, resting anybody. You don't do that in college hockey. But coming off an emotional win, end of the semester, against the Colorado College team that's coming in with something to prove. Yes, it's at the Ralph. Yes, that is a very hard place to play. But Colorado College has been decent on the road too this year. 3-1 on the road. So there's points to be made. There's points to be had.
Yeah. That's what goes through my head, Dan. Is you want to make a little bet that you like that just is different. Go with the massive underdog in this series because they should not be that big of an underdog. That's my only point. I always like to find edges, and an edge sometimes is when the odds are set incorrectly. This one feels like an odd that is set incorrectly.
Well, I want to throw in the goaltending one more time to make you feel better about betting the underdog in this one. Okay, Caden Umberrico has given up more than 3 goals only 3 times. Given up 3 goals twice and has been 2 goals or under for 9 games this season. you look at his overall save percentage, you might say, not so great right now at 909, but in the last month, he's 933. Meanwhile, you take Ludwig Pearson over at North Dakota. His overall is 914, but last weekend was an 852 in the 2 games against Denver. So if you think there's a hot goalie, maybe that's something to get you to lean on Colorado College for the upset.
I like those numbers. I really do. And no disrespect to Bradbury and North Dakota and North Dakota fans. Sorry, guys. I know that we have more North Dakota fans than anybody else that listens to this podcast, but in seriousness, it's one of those bets that you maybe not betting to definitely win it. This isn't one of your guarantees. This isn't your take the money to the bank. This is not back up the truck bet, but it's one that you're sitting there saying, hey, plus 300, that's good odds. You're not going to get odds like that on Colorado College all year.
Hey, pizza money, right, Jim?
Elf on the shelf money. We're not doing elf on the shelf. That is not a thing. If one of these, I won't gamble with that either. So if anyone says, I'll bet you to get an elf on the shelf if this hit, nope, absolutely not. End of story.
Well, we'll do puck on a truck.
Puck on a truck. There we go.
Well, let's wrap it up there for this edition of USCHO Edge. For Jim Connelly, for Dan Rubin, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.